Hello friends, and welcome back to Journey Through Time, where we uncover the great mysteries of history, science, and the story of humankind. Tonight, we embark on a journey that takes us deep into the forests of Africa and across millions of years of evolution, asking one of the most haunting questions ever whispered in science. Why are chimpanzees not evolving into humans? And perhaps even more importantly, what are they becoming? For centuries, we have gazed into the eyes of chimpanzees and felt a strange reflection of ourselves. Their hands resemble ours, their gaze feels familiar, and their kinship with us is undeniable. We share almost 99% of the same DNA, and yet, the worlds we live in could not be further apart. Humans build civilizations, while chimps continue their lives in the forests. This has led many to imagine them walking on the same road, just a few steps behind us, destined, perhaps, to catch up. But this picture, as compelling as it feels, is deeply misleading. The famous drawing of the March of Progress, showing a stooped ape rising step by step into a modern human, has left us with the wrong idea. That evolution is a ladder, and that we humans stand on the highest rung, with other species climbing up behind us. But nature does not climb stairs. It branches like a tree. Life has no finish line, no crown, no final goal. Humans are just one branch, unique in its own way, but no more the end point than chimps, gorillas, or any other creature alive today. Chimpanzees are not failed humans. They are not primitive versions of us waiting to transform. They have been evolving on their own path for millions of years, shaped by forests, food, predators, and the challenges of their environment. Imagine two rivers flowing from the same spring, at first nearly identical, but one becomes a mighty waterfall, while the other winds quietly through forests. Both are real. Both are beautiful, and both are true to the landscapes they pass through. The same is true of humans and chimps. To ask why chimps aren't becoming human is to misunderstand the story. They are indeed evolving, but into the future of chimpanzees, not into copies of us. Their bodies, behaviors, and genes are shifting every generation, adapting to new diseases, changing climates, and the pressures of human expansion into their world. Just as we evolve, so do they. This truth reframes our connection. Chimps are not behind us. They are beside us, carrying their own legacy forward. They are living possibilities that branched from our common ancestor long ago. Reminders that survival is not about catching up. It is about fitting the world as it changes beneath your feet. And so, while people often imagine chimps waiting to become human, the reality is far more fascinating. They are shaping their own destiny, one that we may never fully know. From here, our story must go further back, to the time when there were no humans and no chimpanzees, only a shared ancestor whose bones now rest beneath the African soil. To understand why chimps did not become us, we must trace the path millions of years into the past, where the great branches first began to split. To understand the question of why chimpanzees did not evolve into humans, we must return to a time before either species existed. Imagine East Africa, between 5 and 7 million years ago. The land was restless. Climates shifted, forests stretched in waves of green, and yet in many places they began to thin. Wide grasslands opened, rivers carved across plains, ancient antelopes grazed near watering holes, while predators like saber-toothed cats prowled in the shadows. It was here that our shared ancestor lived, neither human nor chimp, but something in between. This ancestor carried traits that would later divide into two separate destinies. Some of its descendants remained in the forest, holding tightly to the canopy, while others stepped gradually into the open savannah. From this division, two lineages emerged, one leading to the chimpanzees we know today, and the other leading to us. But the portrait of this ancestor is blurred. Evolution does not draw clean lines. It shades one form into another, leaving only fragments in the fossil record. Among the earliest hints of this split is Sahelanthropus chadensis, discovered in Chad. Its skull was small, with a brain little larger than a chimp's, but the placement of the spine suggested an upright posture, the beginnings of bipedalism. Its heavy brow ridges and short muzzle seemed caught halfway between ape and early human. Was it our ancestor, or merely a close cousin? Scientists still debate. Another fossil, nicknamed the Millennium Man, discovered in Kenya in the year 2000, tells a similar story. Its thigh bone suggests upright walking, yet its arms and curved finger bones reveal it was still skilled at climbing. This creature lived between two worlds, forest and ground, balancing agility in the trees with cautious steps on the savannah. These transitional beings remind us that the divergence of chimps and humans was not a sudden event. It was a gradual unfolding, a long balancing act shaped by climate, predators, and survival. Species shaded into one another like colors, blending on a canvas. Some of those forms vanished, experiments that failed. Others carried traits forward, passing them on across countless generations until they reached both chimps and humans. Picture such a life. At dawn, a creature climbs down from a nest built high in the trees. It forages for fruits and roots, cracks nuts with stones, strips bark for insects. At every moment, it scans for predators hiding in the tall grass. It survives by being alert, quick, and adaptable. These fragile lives carried the spark of a lineage that would split into two. One path leading to the forest dwellers we now call chimpanzees, the other to humans who would one day walk on the moon. What is most powerful about this idea is how it reframes the relationship. Chimps are not behind us on the ladder. They are beside us on the tree, their branch growing outward, just as ours does. If we trace backward past culture, past technology, past even the first humans, we arrive at one single population of apes in East Africa. From that root, two destinies emerged. One remained agile in the canopy, the other stepped into the grasslands. And from that moment onward, the stories of chimps and humans began to drift apart. The next part of our journey explores that great split itself. Climate shifts carved different futures from the same beginning. In the forest, strength in the arms meant survival. On the savannah, endurance and upright posture gave new advantages. These small differences, stretched over millions of years, became the profound divide we now see between chimpanzees and humans. Around 5 to 6 million years ago, Africa began to change. What had once been endless, dense forests began to fragment. Rainfall shifted, rivers wandered, and the landscape broke into a mosaic of habitats. Here, thick green canopy. There, wide grasslands stretching into the horizon. For our ancestors, this was not just scenery. It was a matter of survival. Those who stayed in the forests clung to the security of the trees. Their arms remained long and powerful, their shoulders flexible, their hands designed for gripping branches. These became the proto-chimps, perfectly tuned for a world of height and agility. They could leap, swing, and climb to escape predators or reach fruit others could not. Their nightly nests, woven from leaves, cradled them against the dangers of the dark. Others, however, found themselves pressed to the edges of the grasslands. Here, survival demanded different skills. Without the safety of branches overhead, they needed to stand tall, to scan above the grasses for predators, and to travel long distances for scattered food and water. These became the proto-humans. Their bodies began to shift. Hips, spines, and leg bones slowly adapted for upright walking. Endurance mattered more than raw strength. Instead of sprinting into trees, they could walk for hours, even days, covering miles of open ground. This divergence was not a sudden break, but a slow drifting apart. Populations that were once neighbors became isolated by rivers, droughts, or expanding savannas. Over countless generations, each group adapted to its environment. In the forest, selection favored strength in the arms and precision in climbing. On the plains, selection favored endurance, balance, and hands, freed from supporting weight. The consequences were profound. Proto-chimps thrived in the treetops, keeping alive the memory of fruits, seasons, and social bonds built through grooming. Proto-humans carried forward the beginnings of bipedal stride and hands increasingly used for gathering, carrying, and eventually shaping tools. By the time millennia passed, the two lineages no longer resembled one another so closely. In the canopy, creatures agile and strong, gripping branches with curved fingers. On the ground, beings who could carry food, glance at the horizon, and slowly test the savannah. The Great Split was underway. It is important to see this, not as one species racing ahead, while the other lagged behind, but as two branches of the same tree, each carving its own future. Chimps were not stalled humans. Humans were not advanced chimps. Both were simply adapting to the worlds they inherited. And yet, even in their differences, both carried echoes of that original ancestor. The chimpanzee's powerful grip, the human's upright stride, each is a shadow of the same root, shaped by climate, danger, and chance. From this point onward, their destinies would never fully converge again. The story now moves into the realm of the genes themselves. Beneath bone and muscle lies DNA, the spiral ladder of life, and within the code of chimps and humans, separated by only the smallest of differences, lies the blueprint that would send one lineage into forests and the other toward fire, language, and civilization. Beneath the surface of skin, bone, and muscle lies the hidden script of life, DNA. It is a spiral staircase of 4 chemical letters, endlessly repeated in countless patterns. This code determines how bodies grow, how brains develop, and how each generation adapts to survive. When scientists compare the DNA of humans and chimpanzees, the similarities are astonishing. 98.8% of our genetic code is identical. Out of every 1,000 letters, fewer than a dozen are different. And yet, those few tiny changes have been enough to send our lineages in completely different directions. The difference is not simply in the number of genes, but in how they are switched on and off, how they are timed during development, and how they shape tissues as they grow. These subtle edits in the script change the story of 2 species forever. One of the most famous examples is the FOXP2 gene. In chimpanzees, FOXP2 exists, but in humans it carries small variations that altered how the brain circuits controlling the mouth and larynx function. These differences gave us fine motor control over speech, allowing us to shape sounds into words, words into sentences, and sentences into myths, laws, and songs. Without those changes, the river of human language would never have flowed. Another critical region is HAR1, Human Accelerated Region 1. In chimps, this sequence remained stable and slow to change. In humans, however, it underwent rapid transformation in a relatively short evolutionary time. HAR1 influences how the cerebral cortex, the wrinkled outer layer of the brain, develops. Those folds increase surface area, packing in far more neurons, and giving rise to the extraordinary reasoning, planning, and imagination that define our species. There are hundreds of such genetic differences. Some altered the shape of bones, tilting the pelvis, lengthening the legs, and changing the way we walked. Others shaped immune responses, protecting us from new diseases. Still others fine-tuned metabolism, helping us extract more energy from food. Each tiny change was like a notch carved into a key, insignificant alone, but together they unlocked doors to entirely new worlds of possibility. The result was two very different blueprints. The chimpanzee blueprint produced a body of immense strength, a memory for forests and fruit trees, and the agility to survive in a niche that has lasted millions of years. The human blueprint produced a body less powerful, but a brain capable of inventing tools, weaving language, and imagining futures beyond the horizon. What makes this divergence so striking is how little genetic difference was required. Out of billions of letters in the code, only a handful separate life in the canopy from life on the moon. Every time a human child learns to speak, FOXP2 is quietly at work. Every time a thought bends and loops across the folds of the cortex, HAR1 is playing its part. The story of our divergence is not written only in fossils buried in stone. It is alive in every cell of our bodies, humming in the code of DNA. From here, the path leads naturally into the comparison of minds themselves. For while genes wrote the instructions, it was in the architecture of the brain that those instructions blossomed into two very different ways of being. If DNA is the script, then the brain is the theater where the play unfolds. It is here, inside billions of neurons, that the small genetic differences between chimps and humans grew into enormous contrasts in how we think, remember, and create. The first and most obvious difference is size. A chimpanzee's brain weighs around 400 grams, roughly the size of a grapefruit. A human brain, by comparison, averages 1,300 to 1,400 grams, more than 3 times larger. Yet size alone does not explain the gap. What matters is how the brain is organized, how it is folded, and which regions are expanded. In humans, the outer layer called the cortex is dramatically folded, full of ridges and valleys. These folds increase surface area, allowing billions more neurons to be packed into the same space. Nowhere is this more evident than in the prefrontal cortex, the region just behind the forehead. In humans, it is vastly enlarged, governing planning, decision-making, imagination, and social understanding. It is the seat of foresight, the ability to picture events before they happen, and to craft strategies that stretch far into the future. Chimps, by contrast, have a much smaller prefrontal cortex. Their brains are tuned for survival in the moment, navigating forests, remembering fruit locations, and managing complex but immediate social dynamics. Another profound difference lies in language. The human brain developed specialized regions, Broca's area and Wernicke's area, that coordinate speech production and comprehension. Neurons in these regions connect to the muscles of the lips, tongue, and larynx, allowing precise control of sounds. Chimps can vocalize with hoots, screams, and barks. They even use gestures and facial expressions to communicate, and some in captivity have learned rudimentary sign language. But their brains lack the neural wiring for grammar and storytelling. They cannot combine symbols into infinite patterns of meaning, cannot invent myths, laws, or histories. This limitation defines the great cultural divide between our species. And yet, to call the chimpanzee brain less impressive would be to miss its brilliance. Their mental skills are astonishing in areas vital for forest survival. Experiments show that chimps possess short-term memory, far superior to ours. In a famous study, Numbers flashed briefly on a screen, then disappeared. Human volunteers struggled to recall their positions. The chimps, however, tapped the numbers in perfect order, with lightning speed. Their minds are wired for sharp, instant recall, a survival tool in a dense, dangerous forest, where remembering the exact location of fruit, branches, or predators could mean life or death. Their spatial memory is equally remarkable. A chimp can remember the locations of hundreds of fruit trees across vast territories, navigating without maps or tools. Where humans rely on GPS to move through cities, chimps carry living atlases in their heads, built from years of experience. These maps guide them to resources at just the right seasons, ensuring survival even when food is scarce. This shows that chimpanzee intelligence is not primitive, but specialized. Their brains are finely adapted to their ecological niche. They are experts in the forest in ways that humans are not. In contrast, the human brain traded much of that raw, specialized ability for general-purpose cognition, abstract thought, creativity, and complex cooperation. But this expansion came at a cost. The human brain is energetically expensive. It consumes about 20% of the calories we eat every day, despite making up only about 2% of our body mass. Chimps, with smaller brains, use far less energy on thought, leaving more fuel for their powerful muscles. This trade-off meant that humans became physically weaker, but mentally far more versatile. The difference is stark. A chimpanzee, pound for pound, is nearly twice as strong as a human. Their muscles are tuned like steel cables, built for bursts of climbing, leaping, and grappling. Humans, by contrast, are weaker but capable of building tools, planning hunts, and cooperating on a scale no chimpanzee could match. Evolution sculpted one lineage for raw power, the other for mental endurance. Still, the chimp brain holds elegant abilities that humans often overlook. Their emotional intelligence within groups is profound. They recognize dozens of individuals, remember past alliances, and navigate shifting hierarchies with subtlety. They know when to comfort, when to challenge, when to submit. Grooming, expressions, and calls weave together bonds of trust that are constantly tested and rebalanced. Their social awareness may not scale to nations and civilizations, but in the intimate world of a troop, it is razor sharp. To place the two brains side by side is to see two answers to the same question: how best to survive in a changing world? Humans invested in foresight, language, and cultural accumulation. Chimps invested in memory, agility, and strength. Neither is better in an absolute sense. Both are extraordinary, both born from the same ancestral root, both refined by evolution's endless experiment. And yet, the enlargement of the human brain set into motion forces that would forever separate us. It led to the invention of tools, the harnessing of fire, the rise of myths and language. It gave us the ability to build worlds beyond our immediate environment. Meanwhile, the chimpanzee brain continued to excel at survival within the forests, a different path, but one no less valid. From here, the story flows into the next great divergence: the hands. For while the brain set humans and chimpanzees on different mental courses, the hands carried those differences outward into the physical world. One hand became a lifeline of strength in the trees, the other a tool of precision that would shape civilizations. If the brain set the blueprint for our divergence, then the hands carried that blueprint into the world. To look at a chimpanzee's hand beside a human's is to see two different answers to survival, one forged for raw power in the trees, the other for delicate precision on the ground. A chimpanzee's hand is built like a tool of strength. The fingers are long and curved, the palm broad, the thumb short compared to our own. This design allows a grip of astonishing force. Even a young chimp can hang effortlessly from a branch, their weight suspended by fingers, curled tight, like iron hooks. The muscles that run from the forearm to the hand are thick and powerful, pulling the fingers closed with the strength of cables. Every climb, every swing, every leap through the canopy depends on this grip. A misstep could mean a deadly fall, and so natural selection shaped chimpanzee hands into anchors of survival. When a chimp climbs, the hand is not just a tool, it is a lifeline. In the high canopy, where the forest floor is far below, one slip could be fatal. Their grip keeps them alive, and that same power extends to the way they use objects. Chimps crack nuts with stones, strip bark with forceful pulls, and wield sticks with brute efficiency. Their hands are like hammers, capable of smashing, splitting, and tearing. But what they gain in strength, they sacrifice in precision. The short thumb and curved fingers limit the fine movements that humans take for granted. A chimpanzee can wield a stick, but it cannot thread a needle or carve wood into delicate shapes. The human hand, by contrast, is a masterpiece of precision grip. Our thumbs are longer, set lower, and broader at the base, giving them extraordinary range of motion. The thumb can press firmly against each fingertip, creating the delicate pinch grip that allows us to hold small objects securely. This simple movement, the meeting of thumb and finger, became the foundation of our ability to craft. Beneath this motion lies a web of muscles, tendons, and nerves, tuned for control rather than brute force. Our fingers are shorter and straighter than a chimpanzee's, giving us stability when pressing against objects. The fingertips themselves are broad and padded, packed with dense networks of nerve endings. This sensitivity allows us to feel the texture of stone, the smoothness of wood, or the slip of a tool just before it falls. A chimpanzee can grip with power, but a human can grip with intention. This difference between strength and precision became one of the greatest turning points in evolution. Chimps can crush, humans can shape. Chimps split open hard shells and strip branches, while humans carve wood into needles, tie fibers into string, and stitch skins into clothing. Out of precision came fire. Striking sparks from stone required careful positioning, something chimp hands were not designed to do. Out of precision came sewing and weaving, expanding human survival into colder climates. Out of precision came nets, bows, fishing lines, and eventually machines. The loop between hand and brain is critical. In humans, large portions of the motor cortex are devoted to controlling the fingers and thumb. This feedback system allows astonishing refinement, down to the smallest flick of a fingertip. The brain and the hand grew together, each fueling the other's development. The more precise the hand became, the more the brain adapted to control it, and vice versa. This cycle of coevolution transformed human potential. Chimpanzee hands, by comparison, remained devoted to strength. Their curved fingers fit perfectly around branches, their neural wiring tuned for grip rather than fine control. Their survival demanded raw force, not delicate craftsmanship. For them, the hand is a hook, a hammer, a weapon. For us, it is a chisel, a brush, a pen. The divergence shaped destiny. Chimps remained creatures of the forest canopy, their hands gripping branches as they had for millions of years. Humans, with hands that could manipulate fire and fashion tools, began to transform landscapes. We chipped stone into blades, crafted spears, painted caves, and eventually assembled machines that could leave the earth behind. Every step of that journey depended on the union of precise hands and imaginative minds. And yet, Both designs are extraordinary. To watch a chimp swing effortlessly through the forest canopy is to witness power and grace that no human hand could achieve. To watch a human craft a bow, paint a mural, or type words that can reach millions is to witness precision that no chimp could imagine. Each hand carries the weight of its own path, proof that evolution offers not better or worse, but different answers to survival. From this foundation, another great transformation arose: posture. When humans stood fully upright, freeing their hands completely from locomotion, the story of endurance, migration, and invention began. This choice, simple in appearance yet monumental in consequence, would alter bones, reshape childbirth, and set our species on a course no other primate followed. Among the many traits that separate humans from our closest relatives, perhaps none was as transformative as the decision written in bone to walk on two legs. At first glance, it seems deceptively simple, standing upright, striding forward. But in reality, bipedalism reshaped every part of the human body and set into motion a cascade of changes that would define our future. Imagine the African savannah millions of years ago. The forests were thinning, and stretches of open ground grew longer and more dangerous. Food sources were scattered, water holes few and far between, and predators lurked in the tall grass. In this world, the ability to stand upright was not a matter of elegance, but of survival. Standing tall offered a new vantage point. From above the grass, early proto-humans could spot predators sooner. Lions stalking in the shadows, hyenas roaming the plains. They could also glimpse fruit trees or distant rivers, gaining a crucial advantage in planning their movements. But the benefits of walking upright went far beyond vision. Bipedalism freed the hands completely. No longer required to support weight in locomotion, hands could now carry food, tools, or infants. A forager could walk miles across the plains while bringing tubers, fruit, or meat back to the group. Later, those same hands would strike sparks for fire, shape stone into blades, and eventually hold the pens that wrote history. The design of the human body transformed to support this posture. Legs grew longer and straighter, hips rotated and narrowed, and the spine curved into its distinctive S shape, balancing the head above the shoulders. Feet evolved arches that acted like springs, absorbing shock and storing energy with each step. Humans became not sprinters, but endurance walkers and runners, capable of traveling long distances without tiring. A chimpanzee can walk on two legs briefly, but soon collapses back onto its knuckles. A human, however, can walk for hours, even days, covering territory in ways no other primate can. This endurance became one of our secret weapons. Early humans could track herds of animals over vast distances, practicing what scientists call persistence hunting. While predators like lions relied on bursts of speed, humans relied on stamina. By jogging or walking steadily in the midday heat, when most animals were resting, our ancestors could exhaust prey simply by outlasting it. Few creatures on Earth could match our strange gift of relentless pursuit. But the shift to bipedalism came at a heavy cost. The pelvis narrowed to support upright posture, even as brains were expanding. This created one of the most dangerous challenges in human evolution: childbirth. Unlike chimps, where birth is relatively straightforward, humans faced narrow birth canals and large-headed infants. The result was one of the most painful, risky processes in nature. For much of human history, childbirth was a leading cause of death for mothers and infants alike. Some scientists believe this very danger encouraged deeper cooperation. Mothers required assistance, weaving social bonds tighter within groups. The spine, too, paid a price. In becoming a vertical pillar, It bore strains that four-legged relatives never faced. The elegant curve that allowed balance also left us vulnerable to slipped discs, pinched nerves, and the familiar ache of lower back pain. Knees, hips, and ankles, bearing the weight of each step, wore down over decades. Arthritis and joint damage became the hidden toll of a lifetime spent upright. Even our speed and agility declined. Chimps can sprint short distances with explosive force and climb vertical trees with ease. Humans traded this ability for stability on the ground. We became slower, less able to escape danger in an instant. Our safety depended not on sprinting into trees, but on planning, tools, and cooperation. And yet, the gains outweighed the costs. Upright posture changed not only locomotion, but also thermoregulation. By standing tall, less surface area was exposed to the brutal midday sun, while more of the body was lifted into cooling breezes. Combined with sweat glands spread across our skin, humans could forage and travel during the hottest hours of the day, when most predators hid in the shade. This gave us access to resources others could not reach. Bipedalism also set the stage for the growth of culture. Free hands meant more than carrying food. They meant the ability to manipulate fire, to build shelters, to shape tools with increasing precision. Each innovation fueled the next. Walking upright created a chain reaction. Endurance fed hunting, hunting fed brains. Brains demanded fire, fire demanded cooperation, and cooperation built society. To look at a chimpanzee moving on all fours is to glimpse the path we left behind. Their quadrupedal gait makes them formidable climbers and sprinters. Their angled spines and strong shoulders give them strength we cannot match. To look at a human walking upright is to see the branch of the tree that chose endurance, migration, and invention. Both paths carry beauty. Both carry cost. The decision carved into bone millions of years ago set us on a journey measured not in minutes, but in millennia. It was bipedalism that opened the horizon, that carried us out of Africa, that gave us the stamina to populate the world. And it was bipedalism that bound us to the pains of childbirth, the fragility of the spine, and the weakness of our joints. From here, the next great leap would come not from posture, but from fire. When our ancestors gathered around flames, they found not only warmth and protection, but a revolution in energy that would reshape the very fuel of body and brain. Fire would cook roots and meat, soften grains, and unlock calories that raw food could never provide. And with those calories, the human brain would grow into something the world had never seen before. Long before cities rose, before tools were sharpened into steel, before the first sparks of written language, there was another kind of spark that transformed everything: fire. For millions of years, our ancestors lived much as other primates do today, gnawing on raw roots, chewing fibrous stems, tearing meat when it could be scavenged, and spending endless hours each day digesting food to keep their bodies alive. A chimpanzee, for example, may spend 6 hours a day chewing leaves, fruits, and stalks. Its digestive system is enormous, with a long intestine that works tirelessly to extract energy from raw fiber. Even so, much of the potential energy remains locked away. Then, somewhere in the deep past, perhaps over 1 million years ago, a group of humans gathered around flames. They may have stumbled upon natural fire caused by lightning or volcanic eruption. But at some point, curiosity turned into mastery. They carried embers, fed sparks, and learned to keep fire alive. What followed was nothing less than a revolution in biology and culture. Fire did what no raw diet could. It unlocked energy. Heat softened roots, roasted meat, and cracked open grains, releasing calories that were otherwise unreachable. A tuber that would take hours to chew raw could be roasted into something soft, quick to eat, and rich in fuel. Meat became safer. Parasites burned away in the flames. Grains and nuts transformed into digestible food. Studies today show that cooking can increase available calories by as much as 1/3. This energy boost changed everything. Where chimps evolved large guts to process raw fiber, humans began to shrink their intestines. The extra energy was redirected to another organ, the brain. Cooking became the fuel for thought, allowing the human brain to expand to more than 3 times the size of a chimpanzee's. Without fire, the human brain simply could not have grown so large, nor could it have sustained its enormous appetite for calories. Even today, our brains consume about 20% of all the energy we eat, a staggering cost carried only because fire gave us the surplus to afford it. The influence of fire was not only physical, but also social. The flames extended the day beyond sunset, drawing groups together in circles of warmth and light. Where chimpanzees climbed into leafy nests high in the dark canopy, humans gathered at ground level, sparks rising into the night sky. Fire kept predators at bay, but more importantly, it created a new kind of space, a shared hearth. Around those flames, people talked, taught, laughed, and remembered. Some scientists believe the first myths and songs were born in the firelight. Stories could be told and retold, binding groups together in shared memory. Fire became more than survival. It became culture. The glow of embers lit not just food, but imagination. With longer evenings came planning, ritual, and identity. The evidence in the fossil record supports this transformation. Around the same time fire use became common, skulls of early humans show a rapid rise in brain size, from around 600 cubic centimeters in earlier species to well over 1/200 in later Homo erectus and beyond. Teeth and jaws also began to shrink, reflecting the reduced need for endless chewing. Our faces flattened, our bodies rebalanced. The anatomy of humans was reshaped by the mastery of flame. The difference between chimpanzees and humans became even starker. Chimps, still bound to raw diets, remained limited by the long hours required to chew and digest. Their bodies stayed powerful, their guts large, their brains modest. Humans, meanwhile, gained not only energy, but time. Less chewing meant more hours in the day for other activities, making tools, building shelters, strengthening bonds, experimenting with new ideas. Imagine a scene. Dusk settles, the savannah glows orange. A group of early humans sits in a circle. Tubers roast in the ashes, meat crackles on sticks. Children nibble soft roots, elders tell stories, hunters plan for tomorrow. The fire keeps away the dark and the predators hiding within it. In that circle lies the seed of civilization. Fire's gifts did not end there. It enabled humans to survive in colder climates, expanding into territories unreachable for other primates. It hardened wooden spears, baked clay, and eventually smelted metal. It turned night into day, wilderness into home. The mastery of fire was perhaps the single greatest leap between us and every other primate, including our closest cousins, the chimps. For while chimps sleep in nests high above the forest floor, safe in darkness, humans remained awake, staring into flames, reshaping not only their food, but their very destiny. From fire flowed another miracle: language. For the spark that fed the brain demanded a way to share thought. Words would rise as naturally as smoke, carrying stories across time and binding groups into something larger than themselves. And with language, humans stepped into a realm that no chimpanzee, no matter how intelligent, has ever entered. the world of myths, laws, and collective imagination. If fire fed the body and brain, then language gave humanity its voice. It was the next great turning point, a transformation that reshaped not only how individuals survived, but how groups grew, remembered, and imagined. Chimpanzees, our closest cousins, do communicate. They hoot, bark, scream, pant, drum on tree trunks, and gesture with subtle expressions that others understand. Their signals can warn of predators, soothe tension, or coordinate small hunts. In captivity, some chimps have even been taught sign language or symbolic keyboards, learning hundreds of signs. Yet here lies the limit. Even the most skilled chimp cannot invent grammar. They cannot weave words into sentences that describe yesterday's events or imagine tomorrow's hopes. They live in the immediacy of the moment. Humans, however, stepped into something unprecedented. In our brains, regions such as Broca's area and Wernicke's area evolved as bridges between thought and voice. This wiring allowed us to link words into infinite combinations of meaning. Instead of one sound for one idea, words became building blocks, stacked into stories, laws, and myths. With grammar came the ability to describe not only what is, but what might be. The implications were revolutionary. A small band of early humans without language could only point, gesture, and cry out. They might share food, warn of danger, and comfort one another, but their cooperation would be limited to the here and now. Introduce language, and suddenly, the horizon expanded. One could describe a water hole a day's journey away. Another could warn of predators at dawn. A third could recall where fruit had ripened last season. Memory became collective, stretched across time, and carried in words. Language made it possible to coordinate hunts and migrations with precision. Roles could be assigned before prey was in sight. Strategies agreed upon before danger arrived. Knowledge could be preserved not in genes or instinct, but in stories. Fire taught us to gather. Language taught us to plan. And with planning came imagination. A mother could explain to her child how to shape stone into a blade. A leader could inspire others with a vision of what lay beyond the hills. A group could sing together, synchronizing their movements and binding their spirits. Words allowed humans to share dreams, creating invisible threads that stitched minds together into something larger than themselves. Perhaps the most profound gift of language was the ability to invent myths and laws. A chimpanzee troop is bound by grooming and memory, bonds maintained by daily touch. But human tribes could grow far larger, united not by personal familiarity, but by shared belief. One story told around the fire could link hundreds, even thousands of strangers into a single community. Language turned small bands into vast societies. This capacity to unite through words altered survival itself. Chimps may fight in skirmishes of dozens. Humans, through shared myths, could mobilize hundreds or even thousands. Where chimps were limited by the bonds of grooming, humans expanded cooperation through symbols, rituals, and stories. Language made possible farming, cities, and civilizations. The emotional power of words also reshaped the human heart. With language, grief could be spoken aloud, comfort given in sentences rather than silence. With language, love could be promised, commitments made, and plans bound together across lifetimes. For the first time, knowledge was not just individual, it was cumulative, layered from generation to generation, preserved in oral traditions, then in carvings, and finally in writing. To imagine early language is to picture a world transformed. At dusk, under the glow of fire, voices rise. Someone warns of predators. Another teaches a child how to knap flint. Another sings a song of ancestors. The group listens, learns, remembers. No other primate can do this. The words echo, night after night, until they become tradition. In this way, language was not only a survival tool, but the foundation of culture. It allowed ideas to outlast the individuals who first spoke them. It allowed values, laws, and dreams to be carried into futures unseen. Chimps pass down traditions too, nutcracking, termite fishing, but their knowledge fades when groups vanish. Human culture endures because words endure. Language, fire, and endurance walking together set the stage for something even greater: the creation of societies and cooperation on scales unimaginable to any other primate. Where chimps live in bands of dozens, humans would soon weave communities of hundreds, then thousands, bound by nothing more than stories carried in breath. If fire gave us energy and language gave us voice, then social bonds gave us survival. For neither humans nor chimpanzees live alone. Our fates are bound to groups. Yet the way chimps and humans form societies reveals one of the deepest divides between our two species. In the green forests of Africa, chimpanzee life unfolds in communities of several dozen individuals. These groups are fluid, always shifting. Members join and leave subgroups depending on food, mood, and alliances. At the heart of this society lies grooming, the act of fingers gently parting fur, removing insects, or simply stroking another's skin. Grooming is far more than hygiene. It is currency. A chimp who grooms others earns protection, comfort, and loyalty. Grooming weaves trust, repairs conflicts, and builds coalitions. Dominance in these societies is not only brute strength. The alpha male must show aggression when needed, but true leadership often requires tact. An alpha grooms his allies, shares food, and mediates disputes. His reign is fragile, tested daily, and can be overturned if rivals unite. Power is negotiated through a dance of aggression, reconciliation, and alliance. Chimpanzee communities, however, face limits. Once groups grow too large, tensions rise. Competition for food intensifies, disputes become violent, and eventually splinter groups form. The forest can sustain only so many mouths. Thus, chimp societies remain relatively small, intimate enough that everyone knows each other personally. Every individual carries a memory of past favors and betrayals, and survival depends on navigating these bonds. Humans began in circles like these, but language and culture allowed us to expand far beyond them. Where chimps rely on grooming, humans invented new tools for trust: words, myths, and shared rituals. A story told around the fire could bind people who had never touched or groomed one another. A song could unite dozens in rhythm. A symbol painted on a rock could tell strangers, "You belong here." This ability to create imagined connections transformed society. With shared myths of ancestors, spirits, or gods, humans could trust and cooperate with strangers. Tribes expanded into hundreds, then thousands. A human could trust another, not because of years of grooming, but because both believed in the same story, wore the same mark, or followed the same ritual. The difference reshaped survival itself. A lone chimp is vulnerable, but a small group offers protection. A lone human is exposed, but a tribe of hundreds can hunt, gather, build defenses, and withstand threats no single individual could face. With larger groups came specialization. Some hunted while others gathered. Some shaped tools while others cared for children. Division of labor made resources stretch further, allowing humans to thrive in harsher landscapes. This scaling of cooperation also changed the nature of conflict. Chimps wage battles at the borders of their territories, sometimes raiding rival groups, but these fights involve dozens at most. Humans, through shared myths and leadership, could mobilize hundreds or thousands for war, or for building villages, temples, and cities. The same power that allowed farming and civilization also fueled conquest and destruction. And yet, the contrast is not about morality, but about mechanics of social life. Chimpanzee bonds are personal, built through touch, memory, and daily interaction. Human bonds are abstract, built through language, belief, and culture. Chimps live in intimate, fragile webs. Humans live in vast, enduring networks. From these larger networks came cultural accumulation. Knowledge was no longer fragile, fading when an elder died. It could be passed, expanded, and refined. Chimps pass traditions too, nutcracking, termite fishing, leaf folding, but these behaviors remain local, simple, and limited. Human culture, by contrast, layered invention upon invention, growing into an unstoppable tide of complexity. To stand at the edge of a chimpanzee community is to glimpse a world of shifting alliances, where a touch or a gesture can change the balance of power. To stand at the edge of a human village, even an ancient one, is to see something different. Stories binding strangers, rules maintaining order, and knowledge stretching back generations. This expansion of society, made possible by language and myth, would lead to the next great divide: culture itself. For while both chimps and humans pass down traditions, only humans turned those traditions into endless innovation, refining tools, shaping art, and writing the long story of civilization. Culture is not written in our DNA. It does not fossilize in bones. It is a whisper passed from one generation to the next, fragile yet enduring, invisible yet powerful. Both humans and chimpanzees have culture, but the way it takes form reveals perhaps the greatest difference of all. Chimpanzees, like us, teach and learn. They are not blank slates, nor are their behaviors entirely instinctual. In different parts of Africa, chimpanzee communities show unique traditions. In one forest, chimps use sticks to fish termites from mounds. In another, they crack nuts with carefully chosen stones. Elsewhere, they fold leaves to use as sponges for drinking water. These skills are passed down not by words, but by imitation. Young chimps watch their mothers, practice awkwardly, and eventually master the technique. What is remarkable is the diversity of these traditions. Chimps separated by distance can have completely different toolkits. A chimp from one region may never learn nutcracking if the tradition is absent in its group, even though its hands are capable of it. This proves that chimpanzees possess culture, knowledge not carried in genes, but taught and preserved by communities. And yet, chimpanzee culture has limits. It remains relatively static. Techniques endure for generations, but rarely improve. A stone for cracking nuts today looks much the same as it did thousands of years ago. Fire is never mastered, shelters are never built, weapons remain simple sticks. Innovation, though it flickers, does not accumulate. If a group disappears, its traditions vanish with it, leaving no lasting record. Human culture, by contrast, is cumulative. Each generation does not merely copy the last, it builds upon it. A stone flake becomes a hand axe becomes a spear evolves into a bow. Knowledge snowballs. Myths expand into religions, songs into epics, paintings into histories. Writing then cements these into permanence, allowing voices from thousands of years ago to still echo today. This cumulative culture created a feedback loop unlike anything else in nature. New tools allowed humans to survive in new environments, which encouraged new ideas, which birthed better tools. With fire came cooking. With cooking came larger brains. With larger brains came language. With language came teaching. With teaching came faster innovation. The spiral accelerated until humans reshaped landscapes, ecosystems, and ultimately the planet itself. Consider a simple example: stone tools. Early humans chipped flakes from rocks to cut meat. Over generations, those flakes became carefully shaped hand axes, symmetrical and sharp. Later, they were hafted onto wooden shafts to create spears. Still later, fire hardened spear tips. Eventually, bows and arrows extended human reach far beyond arm's length. Each step required memory, imagination, and teaching, qualities that together built upon one another. Chimps, by contrast, still use sticks and stones in ways their ancestors did millions of years ago. Culture also expanded beyond survival. Around campfires, humans painted images on cave walls. Bison thundering across stone, handprints pressed into pigment. These were not tools but symbols, reflections of imagination. They spoke of spirits, hunts, and belonging. Chimps drum on trees to display strength, but humans turned sound into music, rhythm into ritual, and dance into meaning. This difference is not because chimps lack intelligence. They show problem-solving, memory, and creativity. It is because their cultural transmission is horizontal and fragile, passed within small groups, while human transmission became vertical and cumulative, passed across generations, expanding endlessly. The result is not a single culture, but a vast tapestry, layered and evolving, weaving together everything from stone axes to satellites. The comparison is humbling. Chimpanzees remind us of the roots we share, the ability to learn, to teach, to pass knowledge without genetics. They show that culture is not uniquely human, but humans demonstrate the power of exponential growth in knowledge, the snowball effect that turns sparks into wildfires. Culture turned us from clever primates into builders of civilizations. It allowed us to shape environments, to farm, to domesticate animals, to invent governments, to compose music, to write poetry, and to send machines beyond Earth's atmosphere. No other species has taken this path. Yet this difference also comes with weight. Where chimpanzee traditions live in harmony with forests, human culture has the power to reshape entire continents, to alter climates, and to threaten not only other species, but ourselves. Culture is both our crown and our burden, our gift and our test. From this point in the story, we must follow the thread of culture into its next great manifestation: technology. For while chimps still strip branches into simple tools, humans would transform tools into machines, machines into engines, and engines into networks that now circle the globe. The story of chimps and humans, once side by side, now shows one branch reaching into forests and the other reaching into the stars. If culture is the thread that weaves generations together, then technology is the loom upon which that fabric is stretched. For while chimpanzees wield sticks and stones as simple tools, humans transformed tools into machines, machines into systems, and systems into worlds beyond imagining. Technology became the force that not only shaped our survival, but defined our identity. The earliest evidence of technology lies in chipped stones. Nearly 2.5 million years ago, early humans struck flakes from river rocks, sharp edges perfect for slicing meat from bone. To a modern eye, they seem crude, yet for our ancestors these tools meant survival. Meat, marrow, and fat delivered concentrated energy far richer than fruits or roots alone. Stone blades were extensions of the hand, multiplying the bite of our small jaws. Over time, these simple flakes evolved into Acheulean hand axes, symmetrical teardrop-shaped tools crafted with precision. They required planning, skill, and teaching to reproduce. Unlike a chimp cracking nuts with whatever stone lies nearby, humans learned to shape tools consistently, creating patterns that spread across continents. These tools were not accidents of opportunity, but deliberate inventions, evidence that minds were now planning several steps ahead. As millennia passed, stone tools gave way to spears and fire-hardened weapons. A sharp edge bound to a wooden shaft extended the arm's reach. Suddenly, humans could strike from a distance, hunt larger prey, and defend against predators more effectively. Where chimps coordinate hunts of monkeys with speed and strength, humans coordinated with strategy, preparation, and tools. The leap to bows and arrows was another revolution. No longer bound by the length of an arm, humans bent wood and string into weapons that hurled projectiles with force and accuracy. Distance became safety, and prey that once outran hunters now fell at 100 paces. Technology multiplied human power beyond muscle, allowing even weaker individuals to contribute to survival. From there, the pace accelerated. Stone gave way to bronze and iron, metals pulled from earth and shaped in fire. With them came plows, wheels, swords, and shields. Entire landscapes were reshaped, forests cut for fields, rivers diverted for irrigation, cities rising from stone and timber. The gulf between humans and chimps widened with every invention. Chimps still strip branches to fish termites. Humans cut entire mountains to smelt ore. Technology also transformed time itself. Chimps live in the immediacy of hunger and danger, solving problems in the present moment. Humans, with tools, learned to think in seasons, years, and generations. Seeds planted in spring yield harvests in autumn. Clay pots preserve grain for lean months. Calendars, writing, and record-keeping extended foresight far beyond the limits of memory. Yet technology was not only practical, it became symbolic. The same hands that knapped stone axes carved statues, painted caves, and eventually etched words into clay tablets. Technology merged with culture, producing art, ritual, and memory. A hand axe was not merely useful, it could be beautiful, symmetrical, an object of pride. Tools became symbols of identity, prestige, and meaning. Meanwhile, chimpanzee technology remained grounded in the forest. Their tools are remarkable within their niche, selecting stones for nutcracking, stripping sticks for termites, even sharpening branches for spears to hunt small prey. These behaviors prove intelligence and creativity, but they are limited by transmission. A chimp tool tradition dies with the group that carries it. A human invention is preserved, refined, and spread, becoming part of a cumulative library that no single individual could master alone. This cumulative technology is what launched humans into entirely new worlds. Fire gave way to metallurgy, metallurgy to engines, engines to electricity, electricity to computers. Each step was built upon the last, impossible without the inheritance of generations. Chimps remain masters of their forests, their technology stable and sufficient. Humans became masters of abstraction, their technology explosive and unbounded. The divergence reached a scale where the comparison itself becomes surreal. While chimps today still wield branches, humans wield satellites. While chimps drum on trees to signal their presence, humans send messages across oceans in the blink of an eye. While chimps build leafy nests anew each night, humans build towers of steel, launch rockets, and construct digital worlds invisible to the naked eye. And yet, at the root, both species still share that same ancestral spark, the hand that holds, the mind that imagines. Chimps remind us of where we came from, while technology shows us how far we have traveled. The gap is not one of worth, but of path. Chimps perfected life within forests. humans built lives that reshaped the earth. Technology, however, is not only triumph, it carries weight. For the same inventions that gave us agriculture also gave us war. The same machines that cured disease also scarred landscapes. Our branch of the tree has grown enormous, casting shadows that affect not only ourselves, but every other species, including the chimpanzees, whose forests shrink under the press of human expansion. And so, when we ask why chimps did not evolve into humans, part of the answer lies here. They did not walk the road of cumulative technology. They remained where they thrived, in balance with their niche. Humans, by contrast, built a momentum that now seems unstoppable, a chain reaction of invention that stretches from stone flakes to digital networks. From this point, the story naturally moves into the ultimate expression of technology, the building of civilizations. For once, humans mastered tools and fire. Once they could plan and farm, they began to gather in numbers never seen before. Villages grew into cities, cities into empires, and culture itself expanded into something that dwarfed anything our ancestors could have imagined. When the first sparks of fire were tamed, when language began to flow, when tools evolved from stone flakes into spears, the stage was set for the next great leap, the birth of civilization. It was here that the paths of humans and chimpanzees, once so close, diverged into two utterly different destinies. Chimpanzees remained bound to the rhythm of the forest. Their lives continued in small communities, built on personal trust and the daily rituals of grooming and foraging. They perfected their niche, but never expanded beyond it. Humans, however, stepped onto a road where survival was no longer tied to the immediate environment alone. We reshaped our surroundings to fit our needs, rather than merely adapting ourselves to what was already there. The first step on this road was agriculture. For millions of years, humans had survived as hunter-gatherers, moving with the seasons, following herds and harvests. But around 10,000 years ago, in fertile valleys such as the Tigris and Euphrates, the Nile, the Indus, and the Yellow River, a revolution began. Seeds were planted deliberately. Grains were harvested and stored. Animals were domesticated. Dogs, sheep, goats, and cattle brought under human care. What once depended on chance and migration now depended on planning and cultivation. Agriculture changed everything. Food surpluses allowed populations to grow beyond what the land would normally sustain. Instead of dozens, groups expanded into hundreds, then thousands. Villages appeared, with homes built side by side, hearths glowing with fire, not for one family, but for entire communities. No chimpanzee troop could grow so large without collapsing into conflict. But humans had language, myths, and rituals to weave strangers into kin. From villages rose cities, Jericho, Catalhoyuk, Uruk, early urban centers where thousands lived together, trading goods, sharing stories, and building walls for protection. Streets bustled with pottery, textiles, and tools. Marketplaces rang with voices, exchanging not only goods, but ideas. Chimps still foraged for fruit one by one. Humans gathered in markets that pulsed with culture and exchange. With cities came specialization. Farmers grew grain, potters shaped clay, smiths hammered bronze, priests tended temples, scribes carved symbols into clay. This division of labor allowed skills to deepen, knowledge to accumulate, and innovation to accelerate. A single individual no longer had to master every survival skill. Society itself carried the burden, each part supporting the whole. The invention of writing was another step that forever separated humans from chimps. For the first time, words no longer lived only in memory or breath. They could be pressed into clay tablets, etched into stone, painted onto parchment. Knowledge could survive beyond the lifespan of a single person, preserved for generations. Laws could be recorded, taxes counted, myths immortalized. History itself was born in writing. Civilizations also built monuments, pyramids, ziggurats, stone circles. These were not merely shelters or tools, but symbols of shared identity, embodiments of collective imagination. Thousands of hands worked in unison, guided by leaders, bound by myths, striving for something larger than themselves. Chimps built nests anew each night, leaves woven for temporary rest. Humans built temples that still stand thousands of years later, defying time itself. But perhaps the most striking difference lay in scale and abstraction. Chimps recognized dozens of individuals, each known personally. Humans, through shared myths and institutions, could belong to communities of tens of thousands, cities, kingdoms, empires, without ever meeting most members face to face. A shared god, a common king, or a set of laws bound people together across vast distances. This ability to cooperate in large numbers is uniquely human, and it became the foundation of civilization. Civilizations brought both glory and burden. Surpluses of food freed some from hunger, but also introduced inequality. Hierarchies emerged, with kings, priests, and elites ruling over farmers and laborers. Armies formed, not only to protect, but also to conquer. While chimps fought skirmishes at forest borders, humans launched wars of thousands, expanding empires across continents. And yet, despite conquest and struggle, civilizations also gave rise to art, philosophy, and science. Poetry was written, stars were mapped, laws debated, and architecture soared skyward. Humans asked not only how to survive, but why we exist at all. These questions and their answers filled temples, schools, and scrolls, echoing through time. The comparison is stark. Chimps live today, much as they did millions of years ago, brilliantly adapted to their forests, passing down traditions of nutcracking and grooming. Humans, in the same span of time, built roads, ships, cities, and machines that circle the earth. One species mastered survival in a stable niche. The other became an engine of change, restlessly altering every environment it touched. Civilization was the point of no return. With it, humans crossed a threshold beyond which the comparison to chimps could never again be equal. We became architects of our own destiny, for better or worse. Chimps remain guardians of the forest, keepers of a way of life close to what our ancestors once knew. Humans, by contrast, became wanderers and builders, shaping not only the land beneath our feet, but the future itself. From here, the story continues into the modern world, where science and technology exploded into forces unimaginable to our ancestors. But even now, as we send machines into space and manipulate the code of life itself, the haunting question remains: why did chimps not follow us down this path? The answer lies not in failure, but in divergence. They did not need to. Evolution shaped them perfectly for the forests they call home. We were shaped, instead, for restless curiosity, and that curiosity became our destiny. From the first chipped stone to the rise of cities, humanity had already traveled far. But the last few centuries propelled us into a world that would be utterly unrecognizable to our ancestors and incomprehensible to our chimpanzee cousins. The dawn of the modern age marked not just another step forward, but an explosion of transformation. Chimpanzees today still live as they did millions of years ago, in forests of Central and West Africa, forming small communities, using simple tools, and passing down fragile traditions. Their days are filled with foraging, grooming, playing, and navigating the social dramas of their troops. Their nights are spent in leafy nests, woven fresh each evening, high in the branches, safe from predators. They live in balance with their environment, their survival tied to the health of the forests. Humans, meanwhile, have reshaped the planet into something entirely new. In the span of just a few centuries, we have built vast cities that glow with artificial light, sprawling networks of roads and rails that connect continents, machines that fly faster than birds, and ships that dive deeper than whales. The human-built world is no longer simply an adaptation. It is an environment of our own making. At the heart of this leap lies science and technology. The scientific revolution unlocked the ability not only to observe the world, but to manipulate it systematically. Telescopes revealed galaxies beyond imagination. Microscopes uncovered the hidden kingdoms of cells and bacteria. Steam engines powered industries, factories multiplied, and electricity lit the night. Each discovery became the foundation for another, creating a cascade of progress unmatched in nature. The scale of human cooperation also exploded. Where chimpanzee troops are limited to dozens, human nations now number in the millions. Through shared laws, languages, currencies, and institutions, we coordinate across entire continents. We send satellites into orbit, probe the depths of the ocean, and sequence the code of life itself. While chimps crack nuts with stones, humans crack atoms, unleashing forces powerful enough to destroy entire cities, or power them. Yet this divergence is not only triumph. For the same human ingenuity that built medicine, art, and technology also carved scars into the earth. Forests shrink under axes and chainsaws. Rivers are dammed, mountains mined, climates altered. The very survival of chimpanzees is now threatened, not by predators of the wild, but by human expansion. Roads and farms cut through their habitats. Diseases spread from humans to apes, and poaching places entire populations at risk. Chimpanzees once thrived across vast regions of Africa. Today, their range has diminished drastically, fragmented into pockets of wilderness. Where once millions lived, now fewer than 300,000 remain in the wild. Conservationists fight to protect sanctuaries and national parks, but the struggle is fierce. Chimps, who once mirrored our ancestors, now look across the gap at us not as cousins, but as the greatest threat they face. And yet, their story is also one of resilience. In sanctuaries, rescued chimps show remarkable recovery, rebuilding trust after trauma. In forests, they continue to innovate, finding new foods, new strategies, even new tools. They remind us that they too are still evolving, still shaping their destiny, just not in the way humans did. The contrast between our worlds is staggering. Imagine a chimpanzee troop moving silently through dense rainforest, scanning for fruit, grooming under the shade of trees, sleeping in nests swaying in the wind. Now picture a human city at night, skyscrapers glittering with lights, airplanes streaking across the sky, data flowing invisibly through digital networks, billions of people connected by words, images, and ideas. Both are forms of survival, but they exist on scales so different that comparison feels surreal. At the same time, humans continue to ask profound questions about their place in nature. We build laboratories to study DNA, discovering just how closely linked we are to chimps. We map genomes and find only the smallest differences, yet those differences have multiplied into civilizations, spaceflight, and digital worlds. Scientists gaze at chimps and see not creatures left behind, but reflections of the road not taken. They are reminders that evolution does not have a finish line. In this modern age, humans face a paradox. Our technologies grant us godlike power, but they also bring responsibility. The survival of chimpanzees, and indeed of countless species, now rests in our hands. Will we choose to preserve our cousins, or will they vanish under the weight of our progress? The answer will reveal as much about our humanity as any invention ever could. For in the end, the story of chimps and humans is not about superiority. It is about divergence. Chimps have remained masters of the forest, perfectly adapted to their world. Humans became architects of worlds that never existed before. Both paths are valid, both extraordinary, both born from the same root. And so, as the modern world hums with electricity and satellites orbit overhead, the forests still echo with the drumming of chimps on hollow trees, with the calls of mothers to their young, with the whispers of a lineage that began beside ours. The two branches of the tree remain, one reaching for the stars, the other holding firmly to the canopy. From here, our journey must approach its conclusion. For we began with a simple question: why are chimps not evolving into humans? And the answer, after all these millions of years, is that they are not meant to. They are evolving into the future of chimpanzees, just as we evolve into the future of humanity. And so, after walking through millions of years of history, we return to the question that first brought us here. Why are chimpanzees not evolving into humans? The answer is both simple and profound. Evolution is not a ladder to climb, with humans at the top and chimps below. It is a tree, branching endlessly, with each species following its own path. Chimps are not unfinished humans, nor are they behind us in some race. They are simply themselves, creatures perfectly adapted to the forests, rivers, and challenges of their world. We share a common ancestor with them, a shadow that lived millions of years ago in the shifting landscapes of Africa. From that ancestor, two branches emerged, one leading to chimpanzees, masters of the forest canopy, the other leading to humans, restless builders of fire, language, technology, and civilizations. Neither branch is better, neither is worse. Each is a story of survival, written in the code of life and shaped by time. Chimpanzees remind us of our roots, of the intelligence and social bonds that existed long before our cities. They show us that culture is not uniquely human, that compassion, rivalry, and memory live in other hearts too. Humans, in turn, remind ourselves of what divergence can do, how imagination, cooperation, and technology can reshape an entire planet. But with that power comes responsibility. For today, the future of chimpanzees does not rest only in nature's hands. It rests in ours. We are the branch that has grown wide enough to affect all others. How we choose to act will decide whether chimps thrive in the wild forests of tomorrow or vanish into memory. And so, the truth is clear. Chimps will never become humans because they are evolving into something else, their own destiny, just as we are evolving into ours. The beauty of life lies not in convergence, but in diversity. Thank you for joining us on this journey across time, from the roots of our shared ancestry to the branches of our different futures. If you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. You've been watching Journey Through Time. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and never stop asking questions.